Hello everyone, and welcome back to today's reading of Atlantis. Today's chapter, The Destruction of Atlantis. If Atlantis did really exist, what could have caused this great island to disappear so completely that no certain evidence of its existence has yet been found? There are almost as many theories about the cause of Atlantis' destruction as there are about its existence. Destruction by the Great Flood. The destruction of Atlantis, according to Ignatius Donnelly, was the basis for the Great Flood described in the Bible and other ancient literature. Cultures all around the world have legends of a great flood that wiped out almost all of the civilized world. Did such a flood engulf the entire Earth and wipe out a huge portion of the population? Or was the destruction of Atlantis the basis for the legends? Plato wrote in the Timaeus dialogue that Atlantis disappeared into the sea in one night and one day. Edgar Cayce, on the other hand, told of 3 destructions thousands of years apart, which finally caused the whole of Atlantis to sink beneath the sea. Could these destructions have been the result of an incredible flood which survivors later described to the people in their new homeland? Geologist Dorothy Vitaliano does not think so. She does not believe the destruction of Atlantis inspired the flood legends of so many cultures. It is highly unlikely, she says, that one huge flood washed over so many lands at once, or that only one flood is responsible for all the legends. Most ancient cultures, she reminds us, lived in great river valleys, for they were the most fertile areas. Rivers also provided food, water, and good transportation. Flooding was, and still is, quite common along these rivers. Vitaliano believes the flood legends are based on local floods that periodically have wiped out populations dwelling in the great river valleys. The end of an ice age. Another natural cause of a great flood and the destruction of Atlantis might have been a sudden rise in sea level. Before the melting of the glaciers, sea level all over the world was about 300 feet lower than it is today. Did the melting of the glaciers at the end of the Ice Age sink Atlantis? The Ice Age ended between 11,000 and 12,000 years ago, just about the time, according to Plato, that Atlantis slipped into the sea. But conventional geology says that the glacial melting was due to gradual temperature changes on Earth. So the rise in sea level was very gradual too. At most, it may have risen only a few feet a year. That would make it impossible for glacial waters to have flooded Atlantis in a day and a night. Geologists are not sure, however, what caused the glaciers to melt. Their best guess is that the melting was a gradual process. But what if something cataclysmic set off the glacial melting? What if a great meteor had struck the Earth? Or what if the planet Venus or a comet had passed dangerously close to Earth? What if the Earth had shifted on its axis? Or again, what if ancient people set off an explosion of even greater intensity than that of today's atomic bombs? Could any of these events have caused a very quick meltdown of the glaciers? Perhaps the great island nation of Atlantis was destroyed by a tidal wave of glacial water. Destruction by comet or meteor. Ignatius Donnelly devoted an entire book to the idea that Atlantis was destroyed by a collision with a comet. He also wrote that the entire Earth was plunged into a period of darkness when it passed through the tail of a comet. Current research into the composition of comets, however, has eliminated less as a likelihood. Physicist Otto Mach, a rocket researcher, wrote in The Secret of Atlantis that Atlantis was destroyed by a giant meteor. According to his research, on June 58,498 BC, asteroid A did wildly go off course, break in pieces, plunge into the Atlantic's Bermuda Triangle, dragging with it an entire island civilization. The meteor fell into the southwest part of the North Atlantic, he says, striking with the force of 30,000 H-bombs. It crushed Atlantis and unleashed a tidal wave of explosions, floods, and changes on the ocean floor. The fact that it hit at the weak point, where three tectonic plates come together, made it all the more devastating. Mach also proposed that the collision and the sinking of the large land mass set off a chain reaction of earthquakes and tidal waves around the world. Like Donnelly, Mach believed that the sinking of Atlantis was the basis for the legends of the Great Flood. Near collision with Venus. Scientist Emanuel Velikovsky turned the scientific world upside down in the 1950s when he wrote that the planet Venus had nearly collided with Earth several times in ancient history. Venus passed so close to Earth that the Earth shook on its axis. The seasons were thrown out of sequence. There were periods of great darkness. There were great changes on the surface of the planet and beneath it. Deep cracks were even created in the tectonic plates beneath the continents. If all this did occur, is it any wonder that land masses disappeared in a day and a night? Destruction by human technology. Many believe that the Atlanteans caused their own destruction. Edgar Cayce claimed that the instrument of their doom was a machine capable of harnessing natural forces, perhaps a machine that could make use of the magnetic forces in rocks and crystals. Literature of ancient India tells of aircraft, rockets, and bombs of atomic magnitude. This suggests that thousands of years ago such weapons were not only imaginable, but perhaps a reality. This literature also contains reference to atomic and molecular theory, relatively recent developments for us. An archaeological dig in Iraq in 1947 unearthed a level of fused glass. The fused glass was similar to the fused glass created on the desert of New Mexico when the first atomic bomb was tested there. Charles Berlitz writes in Atlantis, the eighth continent, the concept of the Earth in its past history, having been damaged by nuclear warfare violent enough to have modified the climate, melted the glaciers, or affected its movement on its axis, and caused, in the words of the legends, land and water to have changed their places, would seem to belong to the domain of science fiction. Yet, he adds that science fiction and scientific fact have become rather close in recent history. Did Atlantis destroy itself with a powerful weapon? Could a weapon have existed that is beyond even our imagination? A weapon that could evaporate an entire continent, or cause it to sink without a trace? But then, who would have thought 100 years ago that we would be able to create bombs that kill people but leave buildings intact, namely the neutron bomb, or that we would have the weaponry to destroy our whole planet many times over? Destruction from above. Both Plato and Edgar Cayce tell about an Atlantis in which the people had become corrupt, and indirectly brought about their own destruction. Plato's story ends abruptly, just as Zeus is calling together the other Greek gods to decide how to punish Atlantis for its wickedness. Did supernatural forces, the gods, destroy Atlantis? A psychic on David Zink's expedition links Bimini and Atlantis with space travelers from the Pleiades. The Pleiades is a group of several hundred stars in the constellation Taurus. The psychic says that these space people brought their superior scientific knowledge to Atlantis. If they could bring civilization to Atlantis, could they also destroy the civilization they helped create? Writer J. Countryman suggests the destruction of Atlantis was a punishment dealt out by the ancient astronauts from the Pleiades. He maintains that the Greek gods were not immortals, but Pleiadians. Zeus was their leader. When Zeus called together the gods at the end of Plato's Timaeus dialogue, he was really calling together representatives from space to ponder the fate of the wayward Atlanteans. The Bermuda Triangle, key to Atlantis. Author Charles Berlitz says that the Bermuda Triangle may hold the key to the existence and destruction of Atlantis. The Bermuda Triangle is the area in the North Atlantic where so many ships and airplanes have disappeared or experienced mysterious occurrences. Edgar Cayce believed that this is where the Atlanteans' power source is buried. Is it possible that power still radiates from this mechanism, causing the mysterious episodes in the Bermuda Triangle? According to Berlitz, diver Ray Brown retrieved a crystal from the waters of the Bermuda Triangle in 1970. Brown claims that the crystal was housed in an underwater pyramid surrounded by other ruins. Did Brown discover one of the power plants of Atlantis? Cayce said that the Atlanteans used crystals as a source of communication and power, and ultimately of destruction. Crystals have been used in our own day for building radios. More and more people today are returning to an old belief that crystals and other minerals have a special power that can be used for physical and spiritual healing. Some crystal-using healers write that the Atlanteans programmed certain clear quartz crystals with information about Atlantis before it was completely destroyed. These healers say that, like our computer chips, crystals can contain vast amounts of information in a very tiny piece. These programmed crystals can be identified, they say, by a perfect triangle engraved on one of the facets of the crystal. The information can be understood by a person who meditates with the crystal and who is ready to receive such information. Does all of this sound outrageous to you, or is it within the realm of possibility? If we can conceive it, isn't it possible? For that matter, isn't the notion of computer chips kind of outrageous too? I mean, maybe, but I'm not gonna think about crystal chips as a possibility. And Rain, that's all for today. I'll see you next time. See ya!